No Man's Sky is such a massive game, and it just recently got even bigger with the latest huge Worlds Part 2 update, which added literally trillions of new planets, including gas giants, water worlds, ruin worlds, along with brand new mechanics and brand new features. Now, coming into the game this big for the first time, or perhaps coming back to it after a number of years away, can be quite daunting, especially considering how much has changed over recent years. Now in this video I'm going to go over a handful of what I call essential tips that the game doesn't tell you about to help you get set up in the best possible way when coming back to the game or booting it up for the first time. Now, I couldn't play the game without some of these, and I've been playing No Man's Sky since day one. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get stuck in. Now first off, let's talk about your inventory. So when you first start out in the game, your inventory is going to be pretty small. I mean, you can't really gather that many essential resources that are going to keep you alive, keep you moving, keep you protected, allow you to build a base, and a whole bunch of other stuff. The good news is though, in each system, you can easily upgrade your inventory twice at a cost. So you can gather more essential resources, and it's super easy to find these expansion slots. One of them is on board the space station within the system, and assuming you've progressed the story to the point where you can summon the anomaly, the other one is at the back of there. Now I'd highly recommend you make use of both of these expansion slots in every new system you visit until you've maxed out your exosuit inventory. It will make navigating the rest of the game far easier if you can store loads of resources and tech in your exosuit. A bonus tip around this is you can also expand your exosuit inventory using drop pods, which you can find on the planet's surface. But stumbling upon these randomly is pretty rare. However, there is a way to find them instantly, and that is on an exocraft. So if you install the advanced signal booster on one of your exocrafts and then use your quick menu, you can get a location to the nearest drop pod immediately, so you can in fact get 3 or perhaps more exosuit expansions per system. And the drop pod one is free. All you have to do is just fix up a couple of things first. Now, resources are the foundations of No Man's Sky pretty much. Nothing functions without them, including your multi-tool, your Starship, freighter, jetpack. You can't build a base without them either, so it makes sense to give you a couple of tips around resources that the game doesn't tell you straight away, right? So the first tip is around actually gathering resources from deposits on the planet's surface. And these deposits are dotted literally all over the place on almost all planets within the game. Now to actually get the resources from the ground, you're obviously going to need a terrain manipulator, but that's not the tip here. What the game doesn't tell you is that you can alter the size of the terrain manipulator beam between small, medium and large. And on top of that, it is essential to know that these different sizes also yield different amounts of resources. So if you make the beam size large, you're going to be gathering resources much quicker, but you'll be getting less of said resource. So essentially, you make the beam as small as possible because you'll get more resources from that deposit. Yes, it will take a bit more time to gather it, but it's worth it. And to change the terrain manipulator beam size, it's R1 and RB, or L1 and LB on PlayStation and Xbox. And I believe on PC it is the T and R keys if you haven't remapped the keys. Now, for some resources, you're not going to be using your terrain manipulator to gather them, and instead you'll be using your mining beam, so things like ferrite dust, carbon, dihydrogen, and so on. Now, mining a decent amount of these will take you quite a while, and a lot of refueling your mining beam as you go, but the quick essential tip here is, to save yourself some time, just jump on into your Starship on a planet with a load of rocks and trees or whatever, and shoot the ground. You'll be instantly gathering a shed load of these resources far quicker than you would be doing it on foot using your multi-tool. Right, let's say you're after a resource which you've come across before that you need, say for example base building or crafting a complex component. You could spend a bunch of time warping between systems and scanning all the planets to find said resource, but there is a much quicker way to find it, which includes giving you a direct path to the system that that resource is in. And it's simple to do. You go to your Discoveries tab, find the resource you're after, and use the resource locator function. Just a neat little tip there that the game doesn't actually tell you about. And sticking with resources, but this time we're going to be talking about the crafting side of things instead. So I have a couple small tips here which come in handy quite often, especially if you're building a base or wanting to install complex technology components. And the first one is, it is possible to craft multiple of the same item, assuming you have the resources to do it. To do this on consoles, all you need to do is use R1 and L1 or RB and LB. And to do it on PC, I believe the initial keys are A and D. So you can craft, say, 10 carbon nanotubes, 10 metal plating in a single go rather than doing it one at a time. One neat addition to crafting that came a while back was the crafting tree, which is especially useful if you want to craft really complex items. So take the fusion igniter as an example. If you open up the crafting tree, you know exactly what you need to craft, and you can craft that resource directly in the tree itself, thus saving you loads of time as well. So yeah, two really simple yet very effective crafting tips the game really doesn't tell you about. So unless you're playing No Man's Sky in creative mode, you're going to need units. Lots and lots of units, especially the deeper you get into the game, and there are a number of ways to go about it. I won't cover all of these methods in this video because that would require another full-length video, and I've already done one of those, so you can check that out if you wish. I'll put the link in the description. But for my number one tip for making money, like we're talking millions upon millions of units, as quickly as possible that the game doesn't tell you about and without using any exploits or glitches, is scanning, with the caveat that you have S-Class scanner upgrades installed on your multi-tool. If you do have these S-Class scanner upgrades installed, you're going to be raking in anywhere from, say, 75,000 units to nearly 500,000 units per creature scan. And as there are usually multiple creature types to discover on most planets, more than 10 types on a lot of planets actually, you'll be raking in millions of units each time you visit a new planet. So not only that, but scanning the plants and rocks is also going to rake you in like 50,000 units per scan as well, give or take, if you upgrade your scanning with the S-Class upgrades. And then if you spend, say, half an hour visiting as many planets as possible and scanning as much as possible on those planets, you'll be hitting like 50 to 100 millions of units in that time easily. Hence why it's my number one quick and legit way to make money. There are, of course, some more lucrative ways to make even more money, but they aren't as quick as just scanning and exploring things. And they often require you to either, say, build a farm, or they use exploits or glitches to do so. Scanning with S-Class upgrades is the way forward if you want to make money quickly, guys. Just make sure you got those S-Class upgrades. And that actually brings me nicely onto my next essential tip that the game doesn't tell you around nanites. Because you need nanites to buy these S-Class scanner upgrades in the first place. And gathering nanites can also be made into its very own video as well, which I have done in the past, but here are my essential tips for getting nanites early on. And more importantly, getting them very quickly. And first up, it involves scanning flora and fauna yet again, so you can effectively get loads of units and nanites by doing exactly the same thing to make your life much easier. Now you already know how to get the money. Now the way to get the nanites by doing the same thing is even quicker. All you have to do is upload all your discoveries in the Discoveries tab. It's that simple. I've been doing this since I figured it out, and recently I noticed I hadn't uploaded my discoveries in a while, and I raked in nearly 10,000 units just by clicking the upload all button. It took literally a second, and you can discover fucking shitloads of stuff by just exploring, which is what the game does best. A bonus tip would be if you manage to find and scan all the creatures on a single planet, you can get another few hundred or even a few thousand nanites depending on how many different creatures are on that planet as well, by uploading them as well. Upload all your stuff, guys, it is worth it. And my second essential tip the game doesn't tell you about nanites early on is refine your junk, guys. You know, so junk like living slime, residual goop, viscous fluids and runaway mold. All of these will eventually refine into nanites, so you can free up your inventory space and gain some nanites off the back of it. Pretty neat, right? And other things that refine into nanites as well, so things like salvage data, pugnium and larval cores, amongst others. But refining junk is my other essential nanite tip early in the game. Now let's quickly talk about Starship launch fuel. Now the obvious resource to fuel your Starship probably would be Starship launch fuel because it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's an easily craftable from common components, so dihydrogen metal plating, and it does the job quite nicely, right? Well, it's not the best option because it can be used up pretty darn quickly. Now another option, which is more efficient, would be to use uranium. And you can gather that from a few planets in resource deposits like the ones I mentioned earlier with the terrain manipulator. This will last longer than regular old Starship launch fuel, which is great. But it's still not the most efficient way of keeping your Starship fueled because there is yet another far more efficient way. In fact, it is so efficient, it means if you explore enough, you'll never have to refuel your Starship ever again. And that is, of course, by installing the Launch Auto Recharger, or Launch Auto Charger. This nice little upgrade for your Starship can be bought using nanites, which you should have by now, on board the Space Anomaly at the Starship upgrade area at the back. Now once this is installed to your Starship, it's going to recharge your ship's launch thrusters at 4% per minute, so whilst you're off exploring, doing God knows what. So unless you're taking off every 30 seconds, your ship will charge itself basically. Like, I can't even remember the last time I actually refueled my Starship manually, to be completely honest with you. And one final tip around Starship launching is if you land on a landing pad or one of the green circles, it won't use launch fuel taking back off again. Win-win. Let me quickly talk about freighters. Now, early on in the game, you're probably going to come across a freighter battle, and assuming you win the freighter battle, you'll have the opportunity to take the freighter without spending a single unit. Now, obviously, the game does tell you about this, but that's not the tip. The tip is, what the game doesn't tell you is that until you've claimed your very first freighter, you're going to have this encounter as many times as you want, and you can just take the getting paid option instead until you find a freighter you actually like. That first freighter will always be free. I think it's definitely worth sticking out a little bit a few times, maybe, to get yourself an A-class, or if you're lucky, an S-class freighter, because, well, they're better. Though I must say, chasing an S-class freighter is a pain in the arse, and in my opinion, it's not actually worth the time or the effort unless you come across one randomly. Now, I did go into details around why, so if you're interested, you can check that video out. I'll leave a link to it in the description below for you. But main tip here is, the first freighter will always be free. You don't have to get the first one, because it's usually a C-class or a B-class. Let's talk about the quick menu, because this is a far more useful feature of No Man's Sky than a lot of people actually realise. Now, you may know of it to take photos, maybe summon your ship, change your multi-tools, or whatever. But you can find so many planet points of interest using them if you happen to be in your exocraft or your Starship. Now, to do this, you'll obviously need to install a couple of upgrades like the Signal Booster or the Advanced Signal Booster as two examples. And with these upgrades installed, you'll be able to find resource depots, ruins, monoliths, which then can lead onto portals, drop pods, abandoned buildings, trading outposts, and if you're in your Northland submarine and you install a sonar scanner, you can then use a quick menu to find crashed ships, crashed freighters, sunken buildings, and submerged ruins. Basically, the unknown tip here is just spend some time seeing what's in the quick menu when you happen to be in your Starship, your exocraft, or in a submarine. It's surprisingly very, very useful. My final tip that the game doesn't tell you is one that I use religiously, and one that almost all players also use religiously, and it is the so-called melee boost. Now, this is a technique that allows you to traverse a planet's surface significantly quicker than if you just happen to run along it. And it's an incredibly simple task, to do. All you have to do is push the melee button while sprinting, so R1 or RB or Q depending on your platform. Then immediately tap the jetpack button, so X, A or the spacebar depending on your platform again. You'll notice you're now flying across the surface much, much quicker. And combining that with the jetpack upgrades is so worth it as well because you can fly along even further. And a little additional movement tip, now technically this one is a glitch I think, but you can move even faster or go even further than that melee jump. And this one involves having a weapon on your multi-tool that has ammo instead of a charge. So something like a bolt caster or a scatter blaster as an example. If you fire off one or two shots but do not reload, and then if you move forwards, hit the melee button and then rapidly tap the reload button, you're going to be flying along even quicker than the melee jump. Simples. And that concludes my list of absolutely essential beginner tips that the game doesn't tell you about in No Man's Sky from a player who's been playing the game since day one. And I actually still use a lot of these tips myself. Now, if you're interested in more advanced No Man's Sky tips, guides, tutorials, or even just checking out some awesome bases, why not check out the rest of the videos on my channel? I've covered literally every aspect of the game in great detail over the years, and I tried to cut out the filler and get straight to the point, so you can get right back to playing the game and enjoying it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you found it useful, and if you're still here, it would be totally awesome if you could support my channel by hitting those like and subscribe buttons. You can now become a channel member as well, and as always, thank you for watching this video, and I'll hope to catch you in my next one.